All right, everyone. Today we're diving into a really big picture, globalization and the future economy. This is something that affects nearly every aspect of our lives, from what we buy to where we work to how cities are built and evolve. So, what is globalization? Simply put, it's a growing interconnectedness of people, businesses, and governments worldwide. Thanks to advances in technology, transportation, and communication, economies and cities are more connected than ever. When we talk about the future economies, we're really asking how will the cities and the countries continue to grow, adapt, and compete in this constantly evolving global landscape. Let's focus on one key question. How does globalization affect the urban form of the city? Globalization doesn't just influence trade or job, it changes how cities look and function. First, cities now compete globally. It's no longer just New York versus Los Angeles. It's New York versus London, Singapore, and Shanghai. To stay competitive, cities invest in the modern infrastructure, high-end housing, business districts, and cultural amenities. Second, we have seen widespread outsourcing of the manufacturing of to countries with lower labor cost, tax, and regulations, shifting the economic uh, um, base of the many city. And third, advances in communication technologies have allowed companies to operate across borders. This shift reshape cities. Some grow rapidly to meet global demand, where others shrink as industries leave. Urban forms become mirrors of global flows of capitals, labors, and information. Now let's look at a real-world example, the UK housing market. Um, Even during the pandemic, house prices in the UK has been rising rapidly. In fact, they have been going up as the fastest rate in over a decade. Nationwide even describes the market as buoyant. But for many first-time buyers, it doesn't feel that way. It feels more like the dream of the home ownership is flipping further away. This image shows average housing price rising steadily, especially since the 2008 financial crisis. And get this, by March, prices were more than 10% higher than the year before, the sharpest jump in 14 years. What's interesting is that this time the biggest increases in London, but in areas outside the southeast, which show a shift in housing demand. And this isn't just a UK problem; it's a global issue. This next map ranks the least affordable housing market in the world with income to a home price ratio. Big cities like Hong Kong, uh, Vancouver, and Sydney top the list. These places attract people because of the job, culture, and opportunities, but affordability, not so much. Globalization and investment trend have made housing in many major cities more expensive and less accessible to local residents, especially for younger generations. So where does all this lead us? We are now in the middle of what's something called new urban revolution. Cities around the world are transforming as a part of the new global restructuring. We have moved beyond the industrial age. Advanced economies are now in the post-industrial information-based stage. Think tech, service, finance. This shift has brought a new form of the urban civilization that more connected than ever before. This is where the ideas of global cities come in. Places like New York, London, Tokyo, aren't just big, they are globally influential, connected by flows of information, capital, and culture. In the past, we used to say urbanizations and industrializations went hand in hand, but today it's different. Urbanization and globalizations are inseparable. You cannot really understand how cities grow and change without looking at global forces shaping them. Marshall McLuhan's back in the 1960s described the world as a global village where mediums and technologies connect people across the globe. Looking ahead, globalizations could shape cities in new ways. We might see more green cities that prioritize sustainability, urban farming to support local food system, and even long-term ideal like space colonizations as humanities pushed beyond Earth. This future shows just how far globalization can take urban life, both here and potentially off the planet. Let's think about where globalizations might take our cities in the future. Um, as we look ahead, cities may take on new forms. We are seeing the rise of green cities, um, as I said, focus on sustainable urban farmings, and even the early conversations around the space as futures a frontier. Driving these possibilities are three major forces. One is demographics. Cities are growing fast, and with rapid populations increases come challenges and opportunities. Another is the transformative powers of the new technologies, from artificial intelligence to clean energy systems, which are changing how cities operate. And finally, there are environmental pressures, climate changes, resource scarcities, and sustainability concerns are demand a new approach to urban living. These forces combined with uh, 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 the globalizations are shaping what the futures of the cities could look like on Earth and maybe even beyond. Let's look at a few big questions shaping the future. Where the global populations keep rising or where it starts to level off. This first image shows projections from 1990s to 2100 and where growth continues. It shows over times. Now, what about where people live? This second image shows rural and urban populations from 1950s to 2050. A key moment happened in 2009. Urban populations surpassed the rurals for the first time in the history. Since then, cities have continued to grow. But where that this trend continue? Or are we nearly a tipping point? Some say we have reached a peak of urbanization, where others argue cities will keep expanding as centers of opportunities, especially in global south. They are the kind of trend we need to watch closely. They will shape the way city grows, adapt, or even shrink in the decade ahead. So, what are we seeing right now is in city around the earth? Um, we're living in the global post-industrial urban system, where cities are digitally connected and a part of the large economic network. What trend um, and communications happens instantly across borders. We also see the rise of age cities, urban development moving outward in high-tech, car-oriented suburban zones. At the same time, environmental concerns are growing. Sustainability, climate change, and air pollution are now central challenges for urban planning. And despite progress in some areas, we're still seeing that the persistent and in many places the intensifications of some condition, especially in rapidly urbanizing region. This trend reflects the complexities of the today's urban world, where innovation and inequalities often grow side by side. Let's talk about global cities, a concept coined by uh, uh, sociologist uh, Saskia Sassen. She described these cities as keynote in global networks, central hubs where information, money, and power flows. What sets them apart isn't just the size, but function. They concentrate on specialized industries like finance, accounting, laws, and medium services that support global economic activity. These cities operate beyond national boundaries. They are not just a part of the country, they are part of the large interconnected global system. In today's global economy, productions isn't tied to one place. It's scattered around the world, but managing this complex system requires advanced financials and producer services. These cities offer specialized skills and infrastructure thanks to uh, um, agglomerations, economies, businesses benefit by clustering together in a few strategic urban center. So global cities aren't just connected; they are production nodes for the service that keep globalization running. They functions as economic giant international gateways and political and cultural hubs, shaping is not just the market but also global influence and identity. Urban study didn't always take globalizations into account. For a long time, cities were studied as if they were neatly contained within national boundaries. Urban development was seen as a domestic issue shaped by national policies and politics. But starting in the late 1960s and early 1970s, that view was challenged. Thinkers like Henry Lefebvre, David Harvey, and Manuel Castells begin to emphasize the catalyst the characters of urbanizations and the need to view cities within the larger global framework. They argue that urban processes aren't just local or national. They are shaped by global economic system, political structures, and the flows of capital. This shift in thinking happened during a period of major economic change when North Atlantis fortunes was starting to break down, and the cities and regions and economies were being reorganized. So to really understand urbanization today, we have to think beyond borders and look at the global parameters that influence how cities grow, change, and function. To understand the shift in global urbanization, we need to look at Fordism, the dominant industrial mode of the 20th century. Fordism was all about mass uh, uh, productions of standardized goods using rapid production lines uh, and the uh, scaled workforce. Productivities are raised, but so did the intensifications of labor. It was supported by bureaucratic trade unions and a growing class of mass workers. But by the 1970s, the systems hit a wall. The crisis of foods began. Mass productions could no longer sustain growth. Commercial market became saturated. Workers pushed back, and entire industry regions began to decline. Cities like Chicago, Detroit, and English Midland, and the Germans ruler expressed planned closure, rising unemployment, and a decaying infrastructure. At the same time, a new industrial district began to emerge, and we also saw new manufacturing hubs growing in countries like uh, Mexico, Brazil, Taiwan, India, and South Korea, place that become key site for global production. As industry decline set in, researchers began to focus on a range of urban issues: shrinking industries, rising property markets, growing territories inequalities, and the politics of space, and the rest of urban social movement. It's become clear that these changes couldn't be fully explained by local or national factor alone. Since the 1970s, the restructurings of cities and regions has reflected larger global shift, economic, political, and spatial. What was happening in cities like Detroit or Manchester wasn't just a local story. It was part of a global transformation. To understand our contemporary urban change, we have to situate it within the broader dynamics of the world economy, a system that shaped the cities not just from within, but through transnational flows of capital, neighbors, and power. Building on this idea, the global city theory emerged in the 1980s and 1990s, especially through the work of John Friedman and Susky Dawson. This theory explores interplays between urban restructuring and the global transformation. It emphasizes the cities are not equal. Their positions in global hierarchies shift not only their global influence but also their internal social pattern. So the social outcomes we see within the cities are closely tied to where the cities sit in the global urban system. Understanding a city today means looking both inward and outward, connecting its local condition to its place in the wide world. To further understand how cities are shaped by global force, we can look at what system theory developed by uh, Emmanuel Wallerstein. This theory explains the global structures of inequalities by dividing the world into three tiles: core, peripheries, and semi-periphery. Core countries dominate the system. They control capitals, high-scale productions, and the global decision-making. Um, Peripheral countries provide labors and raw materials, often remaining economically depends on the core. In between are semi-periphery countries which share traits of both industrializations but still dependent. This global hierarchy influenced how cities evolve. Core cities become global command center, where cities in periphery regions often struggle with under development uh, or inequality. So when we talk about urban restructurings, we are now talking about a city placed in this border world system. According to the global city theory, the way a city is integrated into the world economy and the roles is placed in the global divisions of labor shapes its internal structure. Cities that are more centered in the global systems often experience greater social um, 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 polarization. Why? Because they host high-end global industry like financial and mediums, which bring wealth, but also create deep divide between rich and poor. What cities formations reveals the contradictions of industries capitalization, um, uh, uh, capitalism, especially the rise of spatial and class divisions within the city. A city's social structures is tied to its global function. As income inequality grows, we often see more segregation based on housing market and access to opportunities. This leads to cities that are increasing divided between high income and low income populations, often living in sharply different urban environments. Globalization has created a global urban hierarchy where cities are ranked based on how they help coordinate the activities of transnational cooperation across the world. In the past, cities were often ranked by size, but was the demographic tradition um, but today, the functions in the global economies is just as important. This is the functional traditions, and it reflects how cities are integrated into the global flows of capital, labor, and information. Some cities stand out for their um, cosmopolitan characteristic. Um, and strong ties to multinational cooperate economy. These cities concentrate advanced uh, producer services like finance, law, and marketing. They often serve as key international financial center. This shift reflects the new international divide of the labors where certain cities specialized in decision making and others in production or support services. As cities integrate deeper into global economies, we see major social, technological, and spatial changes, both within city cores and across the surrounding metropolitan regions. In many global cities, there's been an intense clustering of multinationals headquarters in the urban core. This need to overburdened infrastructure, real estate booms, and a surge in high-end construction, especially luxury housing. This changes doesn't stay confined by to the center. They create spillover effect, reshaping entire region. One major impact is a shift in housing market as investment pour in. Property values raise and gentrifications often follows. Long-time residents may be displaced and the social inequalities deepen. So where these transformations reflect global integration, they often create tension around land use, affordabilities, and equities within the urban landscape. Global city development doesn't just change skyline, it also reshapes the social structure of the cities. One major outcome is a risk of dualized labor market. On one side, we have a higher earning uh, corporate uh, people's workings in finance, tech, and advanced services. On the other hand, a large and growing group of low-paid service workers who support the city. This create place-specific social polarization, especially in global command and control center. We see growing spatial division too. Wealth and poverty become increasingly concentrated in different parts of the city, leading to contracts between affluent neighborhood and areas of struggle. The formation of a global city involves several key processes coming together. It often starts with the locations of corporate headquarters, which draws in producers and financial services that support the global economy. As this sector grows, they drive the transformations of urban and regional spaces. But it's more than just economies. Global cities also become sites where new social, cultural, political, ecological, and medium networks emerge. They connect diverse groups across borders and create um, diasporic communities that link peoples and places around the world. Global cities don't exist in isolation. They are part of multi interlocking network that stretch across the globe. These networks are not only economic. We see global cultural flows, political and medium connections shaping how cities are related to one another. Some cities gains prominence through political network. Think of Washington D.C.'s and Brussels, key centers for international governments. Others like Macau, Rome, and Jerusalem hold religious significance. And then there are places like Davos, Switzerland, which may not be economic powerhouse but gain global visibilities by hosting events like World Economic Forum. This example shows that cities can gain global status in many different ways. Cities are not isolated units with fixed function. Instead, they serve as support and expressions of human activities that are deeply embedded in border systems. They exist within multiple interlocking interurban networks, connecting them to other cities through flow of people, goods, information, and influence. This network can be economic, such as global trade or and financial system. They can also be social, political, technical, or infrastructure each forming a district layer of global connectivity. So the spatial structure of the cities is shaped not only by what happens inside, but also by its positions and roles within those overlapping global network. To understand city roles in the global economy, we can break economic um, production down into three key components: land, labors, and capital. Land refers to natural resources. Labor is the human effort that goes into production. And capitals include financial asset and technology. In a traditional economies, these factors look very different from what we see today. Natural resources were often hard to access. Um, Labor was highly intensive, and capital was limited. As a result, production levels were lower, but community ties tend to be stronger and more localized. This set the stage for understanding how modern global cities have transformed this relationship through technological advancement and international integration. In the traditional city region, the city functioned as a hub for the local and regional economies. Transportation was slow, limited to walking speed around 3 miles per hour. Roads were rough and the land wasn't easy navigable, so most goods and services stayed close to home. Um, Local craftsmen and farmers produced to meet local needs um, with limited uh, refrigeration. Food and goods couldn't travel far or be stored for long. Cities relied heavily on natural waterways to connect with other cities. This made ports essential for trade and communication beyond the immediate region. The scale of the cities was shaped by this limitation. Productions and exchange were grounded in what could be done locally and transported slowly. Everything started to change within the Industrial Revolution. As this image shows, we moved from the handcraft production to uh, uh, mechanized factory system. Factory centralized production, increasing the output dramatically. This leads to urban growth as people left rural areas in search of factory work. The introductions of steam-powered new machines and improved transportations meant cities could grow faster, further, and more densely than ever before. This moment marked the beginnings of the modern cities as they know it, shaped by industries, mobilities, and the accelerations of economic activities on the global scale. Let's take a look at Silicon Valley, one of the most iconic global tech regions. Between 2010 and mid-2017, the San Francisco Bay Area added over 300,000 new residents. That's a massive population increase in just a few years, driven by the explosive growth of tech industry. But where the population surged, housing and infrastructure construction couldn't keep up. The regions experienced severe housing shortage, raising costs, uh, traffic congestions, and mounting pressures on public services. This highlights a key challenges for global city region. Without adequate plannings and investment, rapid growth can shrink a city abilities to function. Now let's apply economic base series with the example of Detroit. This theory explains how a city economy depends on its basic sector, industries that bring in income from outside, like manufacturing, exports, or services tied to external market. For much of the 20th century, Detroit economic base was the auto industry. It drove jobs growth and prosperities across the region. But when the industry declines, uh, um, Detroit economies collapsed. The city lost jobs, peoples, and investment, leading to widespread unemployment, infrastructure decays, and population decline. Detroit shows how over-reliance on a single economic base can make cities vulnerable, especially in the globalized globalized economy where industries shift quickly. This image tells the story of Detroit's traumatic population decline. The steepest losses occurs during the 1970s and 2000s, following major industrial downturns, plant closures, and a wave of the out migration. By 2010, Detroit populations had fallen by 61% from its peak. Um, this kind of decline affect everything: tax revenues, public services, housing, and overall health of the city's economies and the social fabric. Here's an example of how this map shows Texas major metropolitan statistical areas, including Houston, the Woodland, Sugar Land. Together, these cities formed a powerful regional economic engine. They are connected through labor market infrastructures and industries, but they are compete with one another. Each uh, uh, um, the MSAs in Texas, whether it's Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio's or Houston's, work to attract companies, investment, and workers. They promote them strengths, tech in Austin, finance in Dallas, energies and healthcare in Houston. Um, this regional competition shifted development patterns, housing market, infrastructure investment, and public policy. At the local level, cities um, pursue economic development for several key reasons. They want to reduce unemployment, boost sales and property tax revenues, and stimulate border growth through what's called the money multiplier effect, where one investment supports many parts of the local economies, from real estate to retail. Over time, strategies have shifted from smokestack chasing, which focused on attracting heavy industries, to high-tech chasing, which target innovations and knowledge-based jobs. Cities both cooperate and compete, often through local organizations. For example, in our regions, we have the Brazos Valley Economic Development Cooperation, City of Bryant Economic Development Office, and Grow with Us College Station, each playing roles in shaping the local economy, but strategies can differ. Economic development professionals often focus on growth and job creations, where urban planners may emphasize long-term sustainable equities and land use. Economic development often follows a dynamic and interconnected process. It may begin with a growing market for a few key exports, along with suppliers supporting these industries. Over time, these suppliers may begin exporting directly, creating new economic links. As the local economy grows where once imported start being produced and sold locally. This boosts the local industries and reduce dependencies on outside market. With continued expansion, the economy become more diverse and robust, eventually is becoming a source of the new exports itself. As export grows, they also fuel a greater volumes of imports, supporting a broader range of the goods and the services. What emerges is an economic reciprocating system, circles where growth sparks new industries, skills, and businesses. Urban economist Williams Thompson described the cities as a distorted price system, a place where prices often don't reflect real cost or social impact. He argued that the cities should to enlarge the range of the choice. The fact uh, in fact, the few urban goals gives more widespread support than the pursuit of varieties and choices. Let's take practical examples. A toll tax. Imagine an influence commuters who fluctuated with the heavy traffic during peak hours. They might prefer to pay more if it means save money. So, if the cities impose a toll on the congested route during rush hour, some drivers might choose alternative free route. That reduce traffic on the tolled road, improving travel times for those willing to pay. This kind of the pricing strategies reflect value-based decision making, but it also raises questions about equalities, access, and who get to choice. In cities, pricing isn't just about covering cost. It can also be used to influence behavior. Urban economists think about developmental pricing, which works a lot like promotional pricings in businesses. Service might be offered below cost for a limited time to encourage people to try it out, especially if it's considered a merit or good that benefits the public. The idea is this by making the service temporarily affordable, people might adjust their spending habit, and over time, even their taste and preference could shift. For example, subsidized public transit might encourage people to drive less. As they become more comfortable using it, they may prefer it. The goal isn't to permanently redistribute income, but rather to shape long-term behavior. Let's talk about the ideas of growth machines, a concept developed in urban um, um, uh, uh, sociologies and political economy. The terms machines here refers to a highly efficient organizations of resources uh, aims at achieving specific goals. In most cities, the goal is growth. Growth becomes a central political and economic growth of localities. It brings together local uh, 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 developers, businesses, leaders, and politicians who may otherwise disagree but found a common ground in the shared interest in expanding the local economy. This desire for growth creates consensus. It drives decisions about land use, investment, and public policy. It can even shape what it seems as politically possible. In fact, growth often becomes a main constraint on reform. Anything that threatens it may be dismissed, even if it offers social or environmental benefits. The clearest sign of the city operating as a growth machine is consistently rising urban population. We can see this through several key indicators. The initial expansions of basic industries, growing neighborhoods, rising retail and wholesale activity, and increasing the intensive land development that are stretched further out from the city core. We also see higher population densities, more financial activities, and the city that constantly is in motion. Together, these elements form a chain reaction. They reflect what we mean when we talk about growth. For those with powers and resources, driving growth become a central issue, something they pursue not just economically, but politically. Let's end with um this cartoon which captures one of the key tensions in globalization. On one side, we have a profit, the promise of growth, innovations, and global success. On the other hand, we have wage, the everyday realities of labor inequalities and uneven development. And in between, that's the fallout, the displacement, the environmental impact, and the social fragmentation, and the contradictions we have talked about through today's lecture. This image reminds us that where globalization and growth can create opportunities, they also come with cost and consequences, especially in the way city growth, change, and the response to global pressure. As future planners, designers, and policymakers, our challenge is to recognize both sides and to think critically about what kind of urban features we want to help shape.